The Alabama Crimson Tide's looking to bounce back after a tough loss last weekend. Bama's on the road tomorrow. Their opponent, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And here to break it all down for us is WVUA Sports Director Gary Harris. Gary, thanks much for being with us again today.
Pleasure, as always.
Thank you, sir. I guess the big question on everybody's minds is, Alabama going to be all right? I mean, you know, that loss and the way it went down, that could be damaging to the team's psyche.
Well,
can they go on the road and beat an SEC opponent this week?
You would think, because they're better than Mississippi State. But, you know, I've said this before. I thought they were better last year than South Carolina, and I thought they were better than LSU last year. And even though Auburn went undefeated, I thought Alabama was better than Auburn and should have won that football game, and certainly thought they should have won last week. So it is a challenge. You know, last year they didn't handle adversity very well. As we said, they lost the game at South Carolina, but still everything was right there for them. They still could have played for the national championship had they beaten LSU and Auburn. They were not able to do so. This year, they still could play for the national championship, but you can't afford another loss. And Mississippi State is a capable football team. They're not as good as Alabama in any area, but emotion will be high. They're playing at home. And as we often say, you know, the best team doesn't always win. If they did, it would be a very boring. You know, sports wouldn't be nearly as exciting as it is. So it is a challenge, and what you said, just bouncing back from what was a really disappointing loss. I'm sure those players and coaches feel just like the fans. I'm sure they look at that game and say, you know, we should have won that football game against LSU, and we didn't. But Alabama has one thing going for it that's a constant. Their defense is awesome. And even in losing last week, they gave up 6 points during regulation to LSU, and 3 of those came after a interception when LSU had first and 10 at the 12-yard line. The other one came the field goal right before halftime. So Alabama's defense is so strong. If the offense will just be average, they're going to win against Mississippi State. So it's in Starkville. It's at night, but Alabama's got a better team. Plus, again, you know, the psyche should be, hey, if we win the next 3 games, we've got an excellent opportunity to still play for the national championship, possibly even get to Atlanta to play for the SEC championship if Arkansas were to knock off LSU. So they just need to remind themselves, and I'm sure the coaches have done this all week, the season's still there. Let's go take it. Let's finish 11-1 and see what happens.
Plenty left to play for, absolutely. Number 3 ranking in the BCS. They're still very much in the mix with LSU in the SEC West. I guess the thing that's been on everybody's lips this week, other than the Penn State nonsense, has been the kicking game at Alabama. Now, have you heard anything or encountered anything over the course of this week that indicates there might be some kind of change or some significant
Not really. And in fact, you know, Coach Saban has said a couple of times this week and following the game last Saturday night, not to put this all on the kickers, because there were some situations that led to those field goals being very long field goals. And Danny, there's really not much they can do. I mean, they've got Shelley and Foster, the kickers. Shelley's the short field goal kicker and the extra point kicker, and Foster's the kickoff guy and the long field goal kicker. The only thing I guess you could do would maybe, you know, give one of them all of the duties and let the other one not play, but I don't see that being what's best for Alabama. And then Cody Mandel's the only punter. As far as we know, Jay Williams, who was on scholarship behind him, he's not been seen on the sidelines now for several games. So while nothing's been announced, my feeling is that he's not, I don't think he's on the team anymore. So the kickers that they have are the kickers they've played with all year, and they're the kickers that they're going to play with the rest of the season, punting and place kicking wise.
And I hate to look way too far ahead, but it just kind of strikes me by watching these 2 teams this season. Mississippi State and Auburn have a pretty similar offense, not exactly the same thing. Are we going to kind of get a little sneak peek of possibly the Iron Bowl this week?
I don't know. I do think there's some similarities depending on if Ralph is in the game for Mississippi State at quarterback. If Russell's in there, they play a little bit of a different offense, more of a traditional offensive look. But I think not really, Danny, to answer your question. I think Auburn and Mississippi State are different enough in terms of their personnel and what they do that you can't read anything into this. Maybe there'll be some things that help them in terms of preparation, but the Auburn game is unique because of the rivalry, unique unto itself, and I don't think that Alabama plays any games leading up to the Auburn game that help them get ready for Auburn.
No such thing as a warm-up for that game.
It's just a different kind of game. But speaking of Auburn, they've got their big one tomorrow in Athens, the oldest rivalry in the South against the University of Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, with a victory, can pretty much punch their ticket to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. You know, I picked Georgia to make it to the SEC championship game before the season. Then they lost those first 2 games, and everybody's like, oh, they're down to go strip. But they're a really talented football team. But Auburn would love to be the fly in their ointment.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because of that rivalry. Plus, build a lot of momentum for the Alabama game in a couple of weeks. And, you know, there's a big game with South Carolina and Florida in the East, Tennessee and Arkansas. So, big day SEC football tomorrow, and we'll have it covered with Crimson Tide kickoff in the morning, then Sports Saturday tomorrow night with John Holston at 10:15. I, along with Todd Hoyer and Bradley Whittington, will be in Starkville for the game tomorrow night. And Danny, let me mention this before we get out of here. Basketball note: The Crimson Tide men's team tips off the season tonight against North Florida at 7 p.m. at Coleman Coliseum. I'll be live at 6 at Coleman Coliseum doing the sports because I'll be doing the game along with Blake Thrasher tonight at 7. We'll have it for you live. Alabama versus North Florida, 7 p.m. tonight here on your home team station, WVUA. So another busy, busy, busy weekend.
There you go. Eat your Wheaties, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us again. Don't forget, you can get your game day started bright and early right here on WVUA TV. Join Gary Harris and John Huddleston for Crimson Tide Kickoff presented by Alpha Insurance, Saturday at 8 a.m.